welcome to Echo Your English. Today, I want to talk about something that I think gets completely misunderstood in the world of English learning. It's about fear, avoidance, and the word that gets thrown around way too often, laziness. How many times have you heard someone say, "I'm just too lazy to practice English"? Or maybe you've said it yourself. "I know I should speak more, but I'm just lazy. I should study every day, but I'm too lazy to do it." Here's what I want you to understand today. When you avoid speaking English, when you procrastinate on your studies, when you can't seem to make yourself practice even though you know you should, it's probably not laziness. It's fear. And fear is a mental habit. This is really important to understand because when you label yourself as lazy, you're misdiagnosing the problem. And when you misdiagnose a problem, you can't fix it. You end up trying solutions that don't work because you're solving the wrong problem. Today, we're going to explore the difference between laziness and fear. We're going to understand why your brain creates these avoidance patterns. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how to break the mental habit of fear. By the end of this episode, I hope you'll stop calling yourself lazy. I hope you'll recognize fear for what it is, and I hope you'll understand that you have more power to change than you think. Let's begin. First, let's talk about what laziness actually means. Laziness is when you don't do something because you simply don't want to put in the effort. It's when you know there are no negative consequences, so you choose comfort over action. True laziness is when you say, "I could study English right now, but I'd rather watch TV," and I'm totally fine with that choice. You feel no guilt, no anxiety, no inner conflict. You just choose the easier option and you're at peace with it. But is that really what's happening when you avoid English practice? I don't think so. Let me describe a different scenario, and you tell me if this sounds familiar. You sit down to practice speaking English. Maybe you open a language app or you think about joining a conversation group online. But the moment you think about actually speaking, something happens. Your stomach tightens, your mind starts generating thoughts. What if I make mistakes? What if I sound stupid? I'm not ready yet. My English is too bad. These thoughts make you feel uncomfortable, so you close the app, you tell yourself you'll do it later, you find something else to do, and then you feel guilty about it. You criticize yourself. Why am I so lazy? What's wrong with me? Do you see the difference? This isn't laziness. This is avoidance driven by fear, and there's a huge difference. Laziness is passive, it's neutral, it's simply choosing comfort, but avoidance is active. It's your brain trying to protect you from something it perceives as threatening. Avoidance comes with anxiety, guilt, and inner conflict. Laziness doesn't. Here's another way to think about it. If you were truly lazy about English, you wouldn't care about your progress. You wouldn't feel bad about not practicing. You wouldn't be watching videos like this one trying to understand how to improve. The fact that you care, the fact that you feel guilty, the fact that you want to get better proves you're not lazy. You're afraid, and your brain has developed a habit of avoiding what scares you. This is a mental habit, and like all habits, it can be changed. Understanding this distinction is the first step. Stop calling yourself lazy. Start recognizing the fear underneath your avoidance. Now, let's talk about why your brain creates these avoidance habits in the first place. Understanding this will help you have more compassion for yourself and will show you how to break the pattern. Your brain has one primary job: to keep you safe. And your brain has a very broad definition of danger. Physical danger, yes, but also emotional danger, social danger. Anything that might cause pain, embarrassment, or discomfort, your brain wants to avoid. Speaking English in front of others? Your brain might perceive that as dangerous. What if people laugh? What if they judge you? What if you feel embarrassed? To your brain, these social threats feel almost as dangerous as physical threats. So what does your brain do? It creates an avoidance response. This is actually a survival mechanism. In dangerous situations, avoidance keeps you safe. If there's a snake on the path, your brain makes you avoid that path. That's helpful. But here's the problem. Your brain can't always tell the difference between real danger and perceived danger. Speaking English isn't actually dangerous, but if your brain has learned to associate it with embarrassment, judgment, or failure, it treats it like a threat. And here's where the habit forms. Every time you avoid something scary, your brain gets a message. Good job, we avoided that threat. Even though nothing bad actually happened, your brain feels like it protected you. This creates a reward loop. You think about speaking English, anxiety rises. You avoid it, anxiety decreases. Your brain says, "See, avoidance works," and the avoidance habit gets stronger. This is called negative reinforcement in psychology. You're reinforcing the behavior of avoidance by removing the uncomfortable feeling. And each time you do it, the pattern becomes more automatic. It becomes a mental habit. Soon, you don't even consciously decide to avoid English practice. Your brain automatically generates excuses. I'm too tired, I'll do it tomorrow, I need to prepare more first. These thoughts pop up automatically because your brain has learned that these thoughts lead to avoidance, and avoidance reduces anxiety. But here's the thing you need to understand. This avoidance habit doesn't actually keep you safe. It just keeps you stuck. It prevents you from improving. It keeps you trapped in fear. And worst of all, it makes you think you're lazy, which adds shame and self-criticism to the mix. Now you're not just afraid, you're also ashamed of being afraid, which makes everything worse. The good news is this: if avoidance is a learned mental habit, it can be unlearned. Your brain is capable of creating new habits. You can teach your brain that speaking English isn't dangerous. You can break the avoidance pattern. Let's talk about how. The first step to breaking any habit is awareness. You need to recognize when you're doing it. So let's talk about how to spot your avoidance patterns. Avoidance can be obvious or subtle. Obvious avoidance is when you directly avoid English practice. You close the app, you skip the class, you don't join the conversation. That's easy to recognize. But avoidance can also be subtle and sneaky. Let me give you some examples of subtle avoidance patterns. One common pattern is endless preparation. You spend hours studying grammar rules, making vocabulary lists, watching English videos, but you never actually speak. You tell yourself you're learning, but really you're avoiding the scary part, which is actual speaking. This is productive procrastination. It feels like you're doing something useful, but you're avoiding the thing that actually causes growth. Another pattern is perfectionism. You tell yourself, I'll start speaking when my English is better. I'll join that conversation group when I'm more confident. I'll apply for that job when my English is perfect. These thoughts sound reasonable, but they're actually avoidance in disguise. You're setting impossible standards so you never have to face the fear. Another pattern is selective practice. You only practice English in safe, comfortable situations. You'll read English articles alone. You'll do grammar exercises, but you won't speak to strangers. You won't join video calls. You avoid any situation where you might be judged. Another pattern is distraction. You sit down to practice English, but suddenly you remember you need to check your email, or clean your room, or make a phone call. Your brain generates urgent tasks to distract you from the scary thing. And finally, there's rationalization. You create logical sounding reasons why you can't practice. I'm too busy right now. I'm too stressed. This isn't the right time. These might be partially true, but they're also serving the purpose of justifying avoidance. The key question to ask yourself is, am I genuinely choosing not to practice, or am I avoiding something that makes me uncomfortable? If there's discomfort, anxiety, or guilt involved, it's probably avoidance, not laziness. Now let's talk about what this avoidance habit costs you. Understanding the cost can motivate you to change. The most obvious cost is stagnation. When you avoid speaking practice, you don't improve. You might know a lot of grammar and vocabulary, but your speaking skills stay at the same level. Years can pass without real progress because you're stuck in the avoidance habit. The second cost is missed opportunities. Maybe there's a job that requires English, but you don't apply because you're afraid of the interview. Maybe there's a chance to make international friends, but you avoid social situations. Maybe there's a project at work where you could contribute, but you stay silent. Fear-based avoidance keeps you from living the life you want. The third cost is emotional. Living in avoidance creates constant background anxiety. There's always this thing you know you should do but aren't doing. This creates guilt, shame, and low self-esteem. You start to see yourself as weak, incapable, or yes, lazy. These negative beliefs become part of your identity. The fourth cost is the reinforcement of fear itself. Remember, each time you avoid something, you teach your brain that the thing is dangerous. So avoidance doesn't just prevent progress, it actually makes the fear stronger. The longer you avoid, the scarier the thing becomes. And finally, there's the cost of lost time. Every day you spend in avoidance is a day you could have spent growing. Time is finite. The longer you wait to break this habit, the longer it will take to reach your English goals. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying this so you understand that changing this habit isn't just about learning English. It's about reclaiming your life, your confidence, and your future. The cost of staying in avoidance is too high, but the good news is you can break this habit starting today. Now comes the most important part. How do you break the mental habit of fear-based avoidance? Let me give you practical strategies that work. The first strategy is to separate fear from action. Here's a powerful truth. You don't need to eliminate fear to take action. You can feel afraid and still do the thing. In fact, that's the only way to break the avoidance habit. Most people think, I'll wait until I'm not scared, then I'll practice speaking. But that's backwards. You become less scared by practicing speaking. The action comes first. The confidence comes after. So the strategy is this: acknowledge the fear, but do the thing anyway. Say to yourself, I feel scared and I'm going to practice speaking anyway. Notice the and, not but. You're not trying to eliminate the fear, you're just not letting it control your actions. The second strategy is to start extremely small. This is crucial. Your brain has learned that speaking English equals danger. You need to teach it a new association. Speaking English equals safety. But you can't do that by jumping into the scariest situation. Instead, start with the smallest possible step, so small it feels almost silly. If speaking to strangers terrifies you, start by speaking to yourself. Record yourself saying one sentence in English. That's it, one sentence. Do this until it feels boring and safe. Then take the next small step. Maybe speak one sentence to a language exchange partner online, then 2 sentences, then a short conversation. Each small success teaches your brain that speaking English is safe.
The key is to stay within what psychologists call your window of tolerance. Push yourself slightly outside your comfort zone, but not so far that you trigger intense panic. Small, consistent steps are more effective than big, traumatic leaps. The third strategy is to practice self-compassion. When you notice avoidance, don't criticize yourself. Don't call yourself lazy or weak. Instead, recognize that your brain is trying to protect you. Thank your brain for trying to keep you safe and gently remind it that speaking English isn't actually dangerous. Talk to yourself the way you'd talk to a good friend. Hey, I know you're scared. That's okay. Fear is normal, but you're safe. Let's try one small thing together. Research shows that self-compassion is much more effective than self-criticism for changing behavior. When you're kind to yourself, you're more likely to take risks and try new things. The fourth strategy is to celebrate small wins. Each time you do something despite fear, acknowledge it. Even if you made mistakes, even if it felt awkward, even if it was just one sentence, you broke the avoidance pattern. That's a victory. Your brain learns through rewards. When you celebrate small wins, you're teaching your brain that taking action feels good. This creates a new loop. Think about speaking, feel fear, do it anyway, feel proud. This new loop will gradually replace the old avoidance loop. The fifth strategy is to reframe failure. In the avoidance mindset, mistakes feel like proof that you're not good enough. But in the growth mindset, mistakes are information. They're feedback. They show you what to work on next. When you make a mistake, instead of thinking, I'm terrible at English, think, interesting, I need to work on that grammar point, or now I know what to study next. This reframe removes the emotional sting from mistakes and makes practicing feel safer.
Let's bring this all together. The next time you find yourself avoiding English practice, don't call yourself lazy. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Be honest. Are you afraid of making mistakes? Afraid of judgment? Afraid of not being good enough? Once you identify the fear, remind yourself that it's just a mental habit. Your brain learned to avoid English because it thought avoidance would keep you safe. But avoidance doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you stuck. You have the power to create a new habit, a habit of taking action despite fear, a habit of compassion toward yourself, a habit of celebrating small progress. Start today. Choose one tiny action. Speak one English sentence out loud. Record yourself. Send one message in English. Whatever feels manageable, do that one thing. And tomorrow, do it again. Each small action rewires your brain. Each time you act despite fear, you become a little bit braver. The habit of avoidance will weaken. The habit of courage will grow. You're not lazy, you're just scared. And scared can be changed. Thank you for listening to Echo Your English. Until next time, remember, fear is not your enemy. Avoidance is. Take one small, brave action today.